It's been so long since I've done a movie review. I'm just kind of nervous. Okay. We're never gonna stop me adjusting my goddamn camera, are we? Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Grace, and while I usually talk about books, sometimes I also talk about movies, and today we're going to be talking about Ne Zha 2, also known as Ne Zha 2, also known as Ne Zha 治魔痛脑海. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to improve my Chinese. So for those of you who don't know, this movie has now become the highest grossing animated movie of all time. Ne Zha 2 is the sequel, obviously, to Ne Zha, which came out in 2019. Both movies were directed by Jiao Zi, also known as Yang Yu. It's so funny that Jiao Zi is his nickname because it means dumpling. Both of these movies are based on this Chinese classic novel called Investiture of the Gods. And if some of you are familiar with my previous videos, when I reviewed To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods, that draws heavily from Chinese classics and Chinese mythology. There is a country in there called Ne Zha, and Ne Zha is not just with Chinese mythology, but also in Buddhist mythology as well. The Buddhist mythos as well, and Taoism mythos. Ne Zha is this character that doesn't really have quite a comparison that I can easily give an example of in Western mythology. He is sort of this mythological religious figure, and to be honest, my knowledge of Chinese mythology is still basic, I guess you can say. So definitely if you want to look up more information about Ne Zha, I definitely highly encourage it. I'm still working on Journey to the West, and I still got so much more reading to do. But Ne Zha has featured heavily not just in Investiture of the Gods, but also Journey to the West as well. This character is in at least 2 of 4 Chinese classic novels. Those 2, Investiture of the Gods and Journey to the West. Also there's Water Margin. Oh god, what was the 4th one? What? Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Okay. See, I'm getting there. But talking about these movies, like I said, the first Ne Zha movie came out in 2019, also received high acclaim. It's a reimagining of Investiture of the Gods with a lot of elements taken from it, but not following that story exactly. And Ne Zha 2 continues on with that story. Before I get into Ne Zha 2, I want to talk a little bit about Ne Zha 1. It's free on YouTube now, so honestly, if you want to pause the movie here, I am gonna give a little bit of spoilers. If you want to pause the movie here and watch Ne Zha 1 completely blind, I highly encourage it. Going into it though, some of my thoughts about it is that back when I first watched it, I definitely felt like, okay, this is something that's gonna lead to something much bigger. And I was right. My own personal opinion about it is that I liked it a lot. The animation was gorgeous, and the theming of what the story was trying to touch upon was so complex. Honestly, I found it to be quite the kind of, I don't want to say mature topic, it's not a mature topic, but it's an incredibly deep topic that you don't really see a lot with what is essentially a movie meant for children. But it's not just a movie meant for children, it's also meant for kids, kids who are older, adults, their parents. Definitely felt like what Pixar used to do back in the day of its heyday, when their movies were not good for just children, but they were for the family. So there would be moments for the kids and there would be moments for the adults, for the serious parts of the movie. So talking about that with Ne Zha 1, there were moments where it was okay, this is funny and funny action and stuff like that. There's a bit of gross out humor, which is why I like Ne Zha, but I don't love it, because there were moments of gross out humor that don't sit very well with me. But I could tell that it was trying to establish something bigger, and the grand climax of the story is what is the nature of good and evil, and how does being good inherently or being bad inherently differ from the environment in which you are nurtured in. Those are some of my spoiler-free thoughts, but getting into a bit of the plot itself. So Ne Zha follows Ne Zha. But first it follows the creation of a chaos pearl. This is a manifestation of incredible power that gets split into 2 separate entities called the spirit pearl and the demon orb. And the master of heaven decides that the spirit orb should get reincarnated into the next child of the general of Changtang Pass, and that the demon orb is set to be destroyed in 3 years. However, due to one of the antagonists, so to speak, named Shen Gongbao, pearl. The demon orb is what gets reincarnated into the third son of the generals of Chengtang Pass, and the spirit pearl actually goes to the dragons. The dragons in this universe are relegated to be jailers of the abyss, and the abyss, if you're a Genshin player, the abyss is what holds all the monsters of the underworld. And so the dragons are relegated to be the guardians, but they're also stuck. And so what the dragons are hoping to do by infusing the spirit pearl into the Dragon King's third son, Ao Bing, is that if he gets trained and is deemed worthy by heaven, they will ascend and get out of their situation. So as you'd expect from a child born from a demon orb, Ne Zha is rambunctious and mischievous and misbehaves all the time, causing so much trouble for his parents, but he still wants to find a purpose. So what he ends up doing is trying to help the people of his village, but his powers, he's still too young to control his powers, and the villagers blame him for destruction anyway. He's like 3 years old. He's like not even 3 years old, which is wild, but look, it's like magic stuff, so don't even think about how he's 3 years old. You know, the thing about orbs is that they grow up so fast. Even after all this, he still connects with Ao Bing, and since he and Ao Bing were born from the same source, they connect with each other really well and they instantly become friends. However, at his birthday party when he is turning 3, Shen Gongbao, who is in cahoots with the dragons and is also Ao Bing's teacher, reveals that his parents lied to him when they told Ne Zha that he was the spirit pearl and that he is actually the demon orb who is set to die by the wrath of heaven. Ne Zha's father, Li Jing, finds out that Ao Bing is the spirit pearl, and since he learns that, he knows that the dragons will get in serious trouble because of this switcheroo. So Ao Bing tries to basically launch a massive attack to keep his secret, but Ne Zha doesn't give up on the people of his village, and he goes back to fight Ao Bing, especially after he learns that his father intended to trade his own life for Ne Zha's so that he won't be killed by the wrath of heaven. So Ne Zha finally defeats Ao Bing, but doesn't kill him because he is his only friend. However, finally the curse is upon them and the wrath of heaven is aimed at Ne Zha. He is willing to accept his fate. However, Ao Bing also doesn't want to lose him because Ne Zha is his only friend. So when they link together, they activate their powers and are able to withstand the wrath of heaven. When I say the wrath of heaven, it feels very Old Testament. So they're able to survive the curse. However, their bodies are destroyed, their souls are still intact, and that's where we go into Ne Zha 2. So I knew watching Ne Zha 1 that it was an incomplete story. And to be honest, I was like, okay, that was a good movie. And it did really well in the box office as well. The Ne Zha movies don't really make a huge splash over here in the US, but I will tell you this right now. You've probably heard me talk about my mom occasionally. My mom does not like fairy tales. She does not like fantasy books. She does not like comics or anything like that. She's always on my case about watching animated movies, watching anime, reading fantasy books and such like that. I didn't know Ne Zha 2 was even a thing until she told me about it, because despite all that, she is still a Chinese woman on WeChat. Everybody was talking about Ne Zha. It came out on Chinese New Year. I think it came into the US a little bit after that. She wanted to see it and she was like, have you heard of Ne Zha? And I'm like, I watched the first one. And she was like, you want to see Ne Zha 2? I was like, you want to see an animated movie with me? And like, she was not intense about it, but she was like, how to say, she wanted to go see this movie. So we went to go see this movie. Bro, we cried. We cried. And the theater was full. It was full of people, Asian people, but it was full of people. And we went twice. I can't even begin to tell you that my mom, who does not like fantasy movies, fantasy anything, does not like animated movies, we went to go see this twice. The second time was in 3D because she was like, my friend in China saw this in 3D and now I want to see this in 3D. This movie is the shit. When my Chinese mom went to go see it twice and cried, everybody was crying. Everybody was crying. I was like, everyone was quiet during those moments. Oh my God. Yeah, so I won't get into any deep spoilers for Ne Zha 2. If there are theaters that are still playing it in your location, I highly encourage to just go, even if you haven't seen Ne Zha 1, but I highly encourage to see Ne Zha 1 because now Ne Zha 1 is on YouTube for free, so that is very helpful. I'm gonna go see it again tomorrow because I can't get enough of these guys. But talking a little bit about Ne Zha 2 without going into spoilers, it picks up right where we left off in Ne Zha 1 with rebuilding new bodies for Ne Zha and Ao Bing, but something goes wrong and now Ne Zha is on his way to the upper echelons of the cultivation world, and with a plot that will like shake the world itself. That's all I'm gonna say. If my Chinese mom wanting to go see this twice doesn't convince you enough, then honestly, if you're a fantasy fan, an animated movies fan, or even just like at all curious about Chinese mythology and the like, honestly, I highly encourage this. And if you feel like you need a little help understanding Chinese fantasy tropes and all that, feel free to watch my beginner's guide to Danmei video. Not because of the Danmei part, but because I do talk a little bit about Chinese cultivation fantasy tropes and its basis on Buddhism and Taoism, as well as its connection to Chinese traditional medicine, how the Chinese masterworks such as Journey to the West inspires stuff like Dragon Ball and stuff for like The Last Airbender. So if you're into any of that, please, I highly encourage to watch Ne Zha. As well as the fact that it is the highest animated grossing movie of all time. What was it? There was like a whole bunch of stuff. It is the highest grossing movie, not in English, it's the highest grossing movie. It's definitely the highest grossing animated movie in China, and I think it's probably the highest grossing movie in China. And it's like the 6th highest grossing movie of all time. So, I mean, I feel like if those numbers don't do it for you, then like, I don't even know what's up. It's not even like the money making numbers that are impressive. Like the fact that like, my mom told me about this because she also did a lot of reading, is that it took like thousands of animators to make Ne Zha 2. And it was like almost 2,000 shots, like way more than Ne Zha 1 to make, like 1,000 special effects, like more characters to animate, and they got over 100 animation companies with like thousands of employees all together to work on this. It's massively impressive. Like, I don't like, the scale really shows in the movie itself. I wish I could talk about spoilers. Like maybe once it's out of theaters I can talk about it more. But again, I highly encourage to go into this blind in theaters. Definitely encourage, it helps to watch Ne Zha 1, but if you don't have time, there is a little recap in the beginning of Ne Zha 2 that will help. And again, I want to give lots of praise to the story of Ne Zha and Ne Zha 2. Really, yeah, I think of it more as like chapters in this large book. The way they try to explore, as I mentioned earlier, like the shades of good and evil, and how good and evil inherent is different from good and evil in action. Because Ne Zha was inherently demonic due to his status as the reincarnated demon orb versus Ao Bing, who was the good, the spirit pearl. Despite that, Ne Zha was raised in a household full of love and full of people who wanted to support him, versus Ao Bing, he was raised by people, and they touch upon the dragons way more in Ne Zha 2, but he was raised with a specific goal in mind that was inherently quite selfish. But both of them try to rise above their natures to be who they want to be. Ne Zha wants to protect people, and Ao Bing is still trying to find out who he is and what he wants to do. So that dynamic is amazing to explore, and I hope they explore that more in Ne Zha 3. Pretty sure it's basically confirmed. I mean, the numbers don't lie. It's probably still going to be a few more years till we get that, because it did take 6 years to make Ne Zha 2, but honestly, I'm willing to wait for it. Like, good art doesn't need to be rushed. But again, the action, the story, the colors, the emotional impact, the themes, like, dare I say, this movie is almost perfect. And even the humor in some ways. Is that a blue jay causing havoc in my backyard? Yeah. I won't keep you here any further because I wanted this to be a short one. So again, if you're able to find Ne Zha 2 playing in your theaters, I highly recommend it. If you'd like to check out my video on The Beginner's Guide to Danmei for a little primer on Chinese fantasy tropes, I highly recommend that too. not to be biased. And yeah, I'm hoping that maybe this can shake up the animated world a little bit, because to be honest, I'm sure we've all seen how Disney has been taking a hit lately. Because honestly, I was thinking about it, like having over 100, I think the number was like 130 something. Having that many animation companies work together to make this, I cannot imagine. Like, can you imagine Illumination and Sony and DreamWorks and Disney and Pixar all working together to make one movie? I can't even picture it. But that's pretty much what they were able to do. So I'm trying not to rant, but I am going to go on a little bit of a tangent. In the world of like Asian animation is definitely on the up and up. It makes me think about like The Boy and the Heron. And I watched a little bit of like the documentary on how that was made as well. It's no joke that like for sure that Hayao Miyazaki's getting older. He's like announced his retirement like 3 or 4 times. But with the death of Isao Takahata, I think that was really like the point in which Studio Ghibli decided to really give like the stage to its next generation. I think, what was it? Was it the Blank Check? I think it was the Blank Check podcast that had an episode on The Boy and the Heron that talked about this, where it's really, we are at the transition point in which we need to learn to give the next generation what they need in order to step up and be the next in line, the next torchbearers for various industries, not just in the entertainment industry, but especially I think we see it most so in the entertainment industry. With the like established members getting older, now it's time to let the next generation take over. However, in some areas, I think the Blank Check host did talk about Disney and Pixar, where it's still the same people going, but now the same people don't really have that magic sauce anymore. They don't know how to be in touch with the current audiences now because the audiences are changing. I'm gonna never stop yapping, but with that out of the way, I hope that this could be a wake-up call for the Western animation industry to shake itself up. But you know, I'm never gonna be hungry for good animation because right now I'm like reassured. I'm like reassured that it's still here and that it's still able to happen. Okay, with that out of the way, I'm gonna let you go. Have a wonderful spring. God, I hope spring is coming soon. Here in New York, we've been having like hot and cold days. Please let me know if you've seen Ne Zha 2, what did you think about it? If you've seen Ne Zha 1, what did you think about it? Both of them, tell me what you think. Let me know what books you're reading. I'm trying to get more into books. I've been working on Journey to the West for God knows how many months. Kiss your family and friends goodnight, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!